Welcome to BSW's Tech Dive. Tech Dive.
Submerge the ship.
The show goes technically deep into products you care about. The new, the old, the newish. So put on your gear, close up the hatch, and prepare to
dive. Submerge the ship.
And now, here's John.
And welcome to this edition of BSW Tech Dive. I am John Lynch, Director of Business Development here at Broadcast Supply Worldwide, BSWUSA.com. Today, we're talking about automation systems, satellite delivery, live assist, all under the umbrella known as Enco. And my guest is the Media Solutions Account Manager at Enco, Bill Bennett. Bill, the topic we wanted to do on this show is called DAD DR. The name itself is kind of scary because it says DAD, as in digital audio delivery, which is what Enco's been known for decades. Disaster recovery, which disaster doesn't sound good, but recovery sounds pretty good. So what are we doing with DAD DR?
That is a really interesting way to put it. It is rather schizophrenic, isn't it? Disaster and then, oh my gosh, and then peace and tranquility with the recovery part. Well, I guess, that really is the solution right there in a nutshell, because there's a lot that broadcasters have to deal with on a day in and day out basis. And then you bring in technology potential issues, weather, black hat sort of things like ransomware. And then all of a sudden you really start realizing you're vulnerable without a disaster recovery plan. Disaster is going to hit. The question is then, how do you as a broadcaster recover from that and keep going? So we've been scratching our heads for a while and working on a design that we have fully put together, and it's called DAD DR, like you say. It builds upon the decades-old award-winning DAD interface that we pioneered, and not just, of course, interface, but database and playout system, automation system, the vast system that is DAD now. DAD DR takes that and creates a cloud-based, fully synchronized copy of what's going on in your station, and it's down to the minute, and all the log files and playout and content and stuff. And it allows you to stay on the air with your tower. And so, I can show you some of our diagrams on how this kind of comes together.
Great.
And maybe I can show you a couple points about, to visualize why people need to kind of be aware of disasters, if that's okay.
Well, one of the things that I always refer to is there are certain things in a radio station, I'll put them in a category of a transmitter, a studio transmitter link, an automation, satellite delivery, live assist system. They have one job: stay on. That's it. Okay. Well, DR is one of those areas to help, because we do know we have certain parts of the country are hurricane prone or twisters, that kind of thing, or earthquake, or just huge thunderstorms and high winds, whatever. So that's where DR really plays into its strength, it would be.
Right on. Because you've got this technology that itself can fail. You can have dual power supply failures. You can have a STL go out. You can have somebody throw coffee, not down into a server, but knock it over a table and it splashes sideways into the frame.
Now, that would never happen.
Oh, especially with lots of sugar and cream.
Yes, there they go. Okay.
I used to work at a nationwide large broadcast network, live 24/7 network, and I drove into work one day and lots of people, obviously ultimately was a couple of thousand people standing outside, which is not good. And
no.
I found out they were doing construction in the back. A contractor hit a gas line going into the building, and no fire, no damage, but there was a gas leak, and so they had to evacuate the building.
Yep.
You can't schedule that.
Nope.
That just happens. So, and we'll continue. So yeah, you're right. The STL can go down, but you can have a backhoe bump into your gas line too. And now we have a bigger problem with more and more what are generally called black hat hackers, folks, nefarious characters creating ransomware, or disgruntled employees, or social engineering methods to grab passwords. There's so many back-end ways to cause damage to a system. Back in September of last year, you mentioned weather, right? Well, Tropical Storm Imelda was coming after Beaumont, Texas, and Channel 12 News was in the crosshairs of that and flooded out. They knew it was coming. They had a sister station in Houston, KHOU 11, and they were able to go back or stay on the air via that sister station.
Right.
You know, because they had warning, right? But that doesn't always work.
No.
What a lot of radio broadcasters will recall a couple of years ago when KQED, a public radio station out in California, got hit with ransomware. Mostly it was hit at the front end of the offices. The on-air systems, which were separate and firewalled, were not hit. But they had a huge hit to like employee records. Doors wouldn't open with that, would generally read the ID badge and open up the magnetic lock on a door to get in. Those weren't working. All their files were encrypted, and they were required or bribed to spend something like $27,000 total. I'm just looking at my notes here, which is a small amount, but I mean, you don't want to pay for a bribe to get it unencrypted, because they're just going to want more next time. So they had a lot of interviews that were lost, a lot of raw stuff. Again, their final on-air production content was mostly okay, but and then other stations like Intercom, 235 radio stations were hit. $500,000 demand. The networks were infiltrated as far as their music scheduling, some production, billing, telephone control systems. Town Square Media got hit. Their automation triggers and imaging and commercials were impaired to a degree. So that's getting closer to taking you off air right there.
Sure.
So yeah, and the stories are limitless. You just go do an internet search and find all kinds of these things. So what we did is we paired up with a partner of ours, the Stream guys, who have a lot of experience with streaming technologies, and we created a cloud-based solution that we call DAD DR. It's part of our kind of cloud-based strategy here, and what it is DAD, just like you have DAD running at your station. You got to have that first. Then the DR solution is a copy of DAD running in a cloud-based environment, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, or something like that. And the two are constantly synchronized through a VPN. And mind you, we're not just doing operating system. We're not at all doing operating system backups or file backups in the traditional way. That way, if a virus does manage to infiltrate your network system on air, it itself generally will not pass through to the cloud-based solution. We are using our gateway product to control the files, and they are only DAD-specific files, and they are not executable files, right? So there's a lot of security going on, and there's other ways that you can control firewalls and routers and MAC address limitations to really kind of tighten up that connection between your station and the cloud. And so you basically have two systems running. You have what's on the air in the studio and on the air in the cloud. And if there is a problem, whatever it may be, you as an engineer can get in there and make changes and redirect audio. So there is one requirement that you have an IP connection from the cloud back to your transmitter, right? And very common these days are to find second or tertiary backup signals are sent to transmitters from IP mechanisms of some sort. So but you got to have IP, because of course the cloud doesn't allow for proprietary hardware. The cloud is running computers only with operating systems and stuff like that only. So you can't really bolt something into a cloud someplace, unless you want to pay for your own physical storage spaces someplace. But but you don't need to do that with this. And so as the engineer, depending on where the failure is, you would get into your systems and remotely make the change and redirect audio from your cloud system. And by the way, we have worked with the Telos ZipStream product, specifically a software multi-codec, multi-stream device that allows you to take one signal in and send it out in different streams to different endpoints at different resolutions and frequency response type of characteristics, depending on the content that you're putting through there. So you can still feed your various streaming CDNs. You can feed your tower. You can have like a really high-end, high-quality kind of QA stream just for the engineering folks to really listen and see how they're doing. And meanwhile, your DAD in the cloud is constantly logging everything, just like it was doing when it was running in a studio, so that when it's time to go back to the studio, you can make a transition back and dump in real time to transition all the content from the cloud back to your studios. So you've got your as plays, you've got all of your, if you're a public radio station, you maybe have a lot of underwriting, kind of their equivalent of commercials. You've got that as well. Those logs are still there. And of course, all the play out logs for everything that you've played. So, you know what you've been missing, in other words.
You also know, back in our cart machine days, what we didn't need, and now we do here 40 years later, just because technology and everything is advanced, but then there are new kinds of hazards out there. And by the way, you mentioned Telos IPStream, also available here at BSW. But back to you is that, there is, I just am impressed with this whole concept of disaster recovery, because I've been in stations where there was a disaster. The worst disaster back in the 70s, the transmitter died and the engineer is on vacation.
Oh, no.
What I ended up having to do once is I called a TV repair guy, and he was able to get it going. But we were off the air for like a bunch of hours till we got that taken care of in a small station. But now, we're talking about, you're off the air for a bunch of hours or something. That is a huge revenue hit, no matter which market you're in. And so the disaster recovery, getting you back up and going quickly, great addition to the Enco product line.
Crucial. Well, thanks. We appreciate it. Customers demanded it, and we understand that need. So that's where it came from. So.
Anything else from the DR standpoint we should share?
Oh, not really, except, we'll always keep evolving this product and adding new features, but there's something from a data security standpoint I always like to say, and that is use two-factor authentication whenever viable, whenever possible, when you're securing networks and devices and, any kind of endpoints. Use two-factor authentication if the device supports it, which helps reduce, vulnerabilities that simple passwords alone may not be able to stop as much.
Thanks for sharing. Great to have you on the show. Bill Bennett, Media Solutions Account Manager with Enco. I'm John Lynch. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Tech Dive.
Baby, turn out the light.